Stalker 2 Cost of Hope is much bigger than I expected. I went into this campaign expecting a 6 to 10 hour story after completing both faction routes, exploring the new regions, and checking as many points of interest as possible. There is easily 20 hours of meaningful content here if you take your time, read every note, complete the side quests, and properly explore both sides of the campaign. I see that reaching 30 hours or more. More importantly, I could not put it down. The story moves quickly, the journeys between objectives really slow it down for long, the English voice acting is on another level compared with the base game, the final hours give both duty and freedom far more character than I expected. There are weaknesses including some repeated travel, a few visual issues, and important regions that cannot be revisited freely, but overall I'm extremely happy with Cost of Hope. This feels like a true expansion, not a short collection of additional quests. Before we begin, this review contains no story spoilers. I'll show locations and brief, context-free gameplay from across the expansion, so consider that your warning if you would rather see absolutely nothing before playing. Will not reveal the endings, major twists, character outcomes, surprise mutant identities, boss outcomes, and puzzle solutions. Chapters are included, so if there is a location you would rather discover yourself, pause the video, check the chapter list, and skip ahead. I've also limited the video to a single ad before the video begins, with no additional manual mid-rolls between chapters. With that out of the way, let us begin with how you actually access Cost of Hope. Cost of Hope is integrated directly into the main game, but GSC has made it easy to begin. You can continue from an existing save, start a new campaign close to the beginning of the story, or use one of the advanced start options to jump almost directly into the complete expansion. Early start skips the intro and the zone's first challenges while keeping most of the main campaign and its major choices available. You can reach the initial Cost of Hope quest fairly quickly, although you'll still need to progress through the parts of the base campaign before the entire expansion becomes available. Advanced Start is the better option if you only want to review or immediately play the DLC. You can choose either a Spark or Award campaign state. This changes where Skiff begins and establishes decisions from the base story. It does not decide whether you later support duty or freedom in the Cost of Hope. I picked one at random because time was not on my side. I wanted to get straight into the expansion. You begin with capable but fairly basic equipment rather than a complete endgame arsenal. That balance worked well. The starting gear is strong enough to survive high-tier mercs. I still needed to find ammo, upgrade my equipment, engage with the economy. On an old endgame save, I sometimes felt overpowered, so unless you are only halfway through the campaign, I would personally recommend a fresh start or a mid-game save. You can also select the new custom rules when starting. I softened a few settings because I needed to complete both routes and capture hundreds of gigabytes of footage against a deadline, while keeping the combat baseline on hard. Custom rules, performance, A-Life, and every major free update 2.0 feature deserves a separate test, so cover those properly in Thursday's Update 2.0 video. Subscribe if you want to see what has actually changed beyond the expansion. At its heart, Cost of Hope is about growing conflict between duty and freedom. Both sides become interested in a mysterious technology hidden within the zone. They have completely different ideas about what should be done with it. One side believes it could help heal the world, while the others believe the world must be protected from the zone and everything this technology could unleash. You don't need to be a die-hard Stalker fan to understand the conflict. New players can follow the main plot as long as they listen to the conversations and read the notes scattered throughout the missions. Long-term fans will gain more from the returning characters, older locations, and deeper references. The campaign still works as a direct continuation of Stalker 2. The writing is one of the expansion's greatest improvements. There is a lot of dialogue. Almost every conversation concerns the current situation, the factions, the characters involved. The English performances are stronger than in the base game, the facial animation often looks improved, and the story never feels rushed, even when it moves quickly. SIRCAA became my favourite character almost immediately. She's funny, charming, and capable of being brutal when a situation demands it. Zulu has a much hotter-headed, no-nonsense approach. I did not warm to him quite as quickly, but his directness makes him a strong contrast to SIRCAA. As the story progresses, you slowly see tension build between SIRCAA and Zulu. The opening sends you towards the slag heap, where speaking with Chatterbox begins the journey towards the Iron Forest. When you first arrive, the gates open during a mutant attack, and you're immediately asked to help. It's a quick introduction. It establishes that this is a dangerous region rather than an empty extension of the map. The Iron Forest surprised me. There are more than 20 map points of interest, at least 5 side quests, and 2 functioning hubs. The region is substantially filled with stashes, artifacts, environmental puzzles, and optional locations. Almost every section felt purposeful, even when the reward was simply simply discovering a well-designed place rather than finding the best weapon in the game. This is also where you begin meeting the people at the center of Cost of Hope and understanding how duty and freedom are responding to explosions being investigated across the region. I'll not explain what happens during those missions, but the Iron Forest works because it gives the story space to build while still allowing you to leave, explore the main map, or pause the expansion completely. Chef's bunker became my preferred base. Chef spends most of his time dancing to classical music, but the bunker provides a private stash, trading facilities, and a guide named Beethoven. The bed initially appears unavailable and unlocks later, but the trade and guide make this an excellent resting point. The second hub belongs to Freedom and gives the faction a proper presence in the region, rather than treating them as temporary quest NPCs. Chef also stocks the 4 weapons introduced for the free update 2.0, the AREV assault rifle, the GP3A, SKP, designated marksman rifle, and the Forest submachine gun. I eventually purchased all 4, and SKP became my main weapon. The 3x Western Scope and Eastern Red Dot sights are also available. I found some of the same equipment at Yanif. These are free update 2.0 editions, not paid Cost of Hope rewards. Cost of Hope is divided into 2 main parts. When the Iron Forest section ended, I initially thought the expansion might be shorter than expected. The story then asks you to wait approximately 4 in-game hours before continuing, according to the notes I received with my code. That pause never felt confusing because the dialogue directs you towards Rostock and there are plenty of ways to use the time. I traveled to Rostock through Beethoven at the Chef's bunker. When I arrived, I overheard Freedom soldiers discussing events I just experienced in the Iron Forest. It's a small detail, but it makes expansion feel connected to the wider zone rather than isolated within its own map. I was instantly drawn in and naturally pulled the story into its much longer second half. The break works because Cost of Hope does not confine you to its new regions. I expected a fairly linear campaign that would move through the Iron Forest and directly towards the CNPP. Instead, it regularly sends you back across the existing map, including areas such as Zaton, while opening new areas and conversations along the way. A few of these journeys feel like filler designed to slow the player down, but most are short enough that the pacing quickly recovers. The second half is where Cost of Hope becomes far more experimental. SIRCAA combines mercenary combat with environmental puzzles and movement challenges, including one of my favorite sequences involving rotating fans. Traveling light is useful because there is more jumping, climbing, and fast movement here than in most of the base game. The environmental puzzles remain varied. One water-based sequence rapidly floods areas and forces you to keep moving, while another anomaly closes in. It's one of the most creative set pieces GSE has built. I'll not show you how it works or explain its solution, just a brief look. The Mans has some of the strongest ideas in the expansion. Rooms can change after you leave and re-enter them. The layouts play with your memory, and the atmosphere sometimes pushes the game into genuine horror. The jump scares are fairly predictable and occasionally cheap, and the puzzle-heavy structure slows the campaign slightly. The setting itself is excellent. The Radiowave Institute is where many of the story's pieces begin to come together. There are returning faces, several surprises, and a special mutant encounter that GSC kept out of marketing. I'll not reveal what that mutant is, but it's something worth experiencing without warning. X16 feels larger than I remembered, with substantial underground travel and some extremely heavy mutant encounters. Several labs and Iron Forest locations almost become horde modes, with close to 20 mutants attacking at once. That creates intense battles, or it can occasionally trade Stalker's slow tension and pure crowd control. My main disappointment is that Lymansk and the Radiowave Institute are not simply permanent regions on the main map that you can naturally revisit and explore whenever you wish. They are memorable campaign locations, but I wanted more freedom to return after seeing how much hard work has gone into them. Cost of Hope also has new anomaly ideas rather than relying entirely on existing hazards. The Flare anomaly appears first in the Iron Forest and later at the CNPP. It produces a powerful yellow flash across the screen and changes how you move through the environment. I'll not explain the tactic required to avoid it, but it's also used during one of the faction's routes to their advantage against the other. You'll notice this depending on which side you pick. A later mission introduces a strange red mist that interferes with mutants' ability to track skiff by scent. The mist is also deadly, creating a clever risk and reward system where the same hazard can both protect you and become the most immediate threat. I'll leave the exact method of navigating it for you to discover. Close to the end, there's another anomaly capable of grabbing skiff, draining his life and blocking certain paths. Discovering how the interaction works is part of the experience, so I'll explain the solution here. There are new artifacts hidden across the points of interest and awarded naturally through the campaign. I'm not naming them because finding them is part of the fun. One artifact appears suspended near the ceiling among stacked boxes. At first I was searching the floor with my detector, convinced it had fallen through the world. I eventually used gunfire, bolts, and a jump to pull it close enough to collect. I'm still not sure whether that placement was intentional or a small visual bug. The campaign also introduces a Svarog detector. It has an extremely clear display, excellent range, and makes tracking artifacts far easier than older detectors. It is also used during the story to interact with certain anomalies and open paths. I received it naturally through the campaign, although I have not yet confirmed whether it remains exclusive to Cost of Hope and can also appear at traders after update 2.0. The Kadaver is the headline DLC mutant already shown by GSC. It charges, jumps, and uses heavy melee attacks and can end a fight in 1 or 2 hits. Its behavior becomes predictable once you learn its patterns, but the first encounters are effective and the fights remain dangerous when space is limited. Cadavers mainly appear in scripted sequences rather than roaming the open world, and they provide a worthwhile mutant loot reward. There is also at least one special mutant variant that has not been revealed in the marketing. Every player encounters it before the duty of freedom decision, so neither route misses it. I'm keeping its identity out this review because seeing it for the first time was one of my favourite combat surprises. Mercenaries are the main human threat for much of the shared campaign for the all-out war with duty and freedom. Enemies with high-tier armour and helmets can take multiple headshots, so some late encounters verge on bullet spongy, but protection generally explains why they survive longer. Stealth is useful in selected areas, and some anomaly mechanics create alternatives to direct combat. Duty and freedom companions can help, although they occasionally get in the way rather than transforming the fight. I also wish the open conflict between the two factions had developed earlier rather than being concentrated so heavy in the final hours. The major decision arrives during a quest called the Destructive Power of the Mind. I reached this point at approximately 8 hours, although a player exploring more slowly could easily take 10 or 12. When Mavka and Zulu are both present here on screen, take note here and create several manual saves in separate slots. Do not rely on a single autosave if you want to experience both routes. From here you choose between duty and freedom. Each route takes approximately 4 to 8 hours depending on your pace. Some moments are shared and both sides ultimately travel towards the same broader objective, so parts of the route can feel strangely familiar when replayed. However, the mission approaches several locations from different directions, and the supporting cast changes enough to make the second playthrough worthwhile. Freedom has my preferred missions, and in my experience the best rewards were obtained naturally through the story. Duty has a stronger supporting cast, more conversations beyond Zulu himself. Once you commit, the opposing faction treats you as the enemy and can attack on sight, giving the decision an immediate presence in the world. I personally prefer Freedom because of Mavka had become my favourite character from the opening hours. Both sides make convincing arguments though. The choice is not a simple good versus evil decision, and both endings felt complete rather than rushed. I was also able to return to my decision save, complete the alternative route, and continue playing afterward, but the sort of progression lockout can make branching campaigns frustrating. Both endings place my save at approximately the 15-hour mark. That number needs context because I listen to every conversation but move between objectives faster than I normally would in order to capture footage for this review. I also selected custom rules on soft while keeping combat on hard. You might notice I turn my HUD elements on at times. I got the code on Monday and managed to get in just under 20 hours of gaming. A normal first playthrough with side quests and exploration should take roughly 15 to 20 hours if you explore every point of interest, collect the artifacts, read the lore, and then return to the 8-hour decision to experience the other 4 to 8 hour faction route. There is easily close to 30 hours here and potentially more. It just depends on you as a player. There appear to be more than 20 side quests across the expansion. Some optional quests can disappear as the campaign advances, so complete them while traveling through the Iron Forest and the other regions rather than assuming everything will remain available after the final mission. The rewards are not perfect. Most DLC weapons are variants rather than entirely new platforms, while the 4 new weapons belong to the free update 2.0. Stashes are often more valuable as reasons to discover well-designed locations than sources of exceptional gear, and several of my best rewards came from defeating major enemies. Even so, the overall quantity of the story, exploration, and faction content comfortably justifies the asking price. The CNPP is the expansion's showstopper, but it arrives very late. I wanted to access earlier, especially because GSC has recreated the interior with insane detail. At the same time, holding it back gives the final hours a genuine sense of arrival. I was excited when I finally stepped inside, and almost every room looked carefully constructed rather than copied or left empty. isn't it? I'm always showing the exterior because the interior deserves to be experienced firsthand. I not reveal how either faction reaches it, what happens there, or how the endings use it. What I can say is that both routes gave me some of my favourite missions in Cost of Hope, and the location lives up to its importance within Stalker lore. Technically, my experience was far better than I expected. I played at 4K with maximum settings on an RTX 5090 using DLSS and frame generation while capturing the game in 4K. Performance generally remained above 100 frames per second, stuttering and traversal stalls felt significantly improved. I experienced no crashes, no corrupted saves, no progression blockers, and no NPC became permanently stuck. The heaviest section was the CNPP, and large groups of duty and freedom fighters were active at once. Even though the game remained playable, this is an extremely high-end system, so the results should not be treated as the same as consoles or lower specification PCs. I'll test the wider engine upgrade and performance changes separate next week. I plan to replay the Cost of Hope on PS5 Pro and Series X to compare. The main problems were visual. Mavkan Zulu's hair could flicker or change colour due to lighting issues, which should be fixed, but from my access files, these have already been flagged for fixing. Some group movement looked awkward. I noticed occasional texture popping. A few cutscenes still felt slightly janky. None of these issues stopped progress or damaged the save, but they're visible enough to mention. But to be fair to Cost of Hope, I'm playing in 4K, but also capturing footage in 4K. When just playing as normal, cutscenes performance are really good with the engine update. Remember this, I played without mods on a clean save. That matters because Cost of Hope and Update 2.0 make major engine and lighting changes, and incompatible mods could introduce problems that don't exist in the unmodified game. Cost of Hope cost $29.99, €29.99, or £24.99. It is included with the Ultimate Edition, while other players can purchase it separately. At that price, I strongly recommend it. This is a substantial campaign with strong writing and exceptional English voice acting. Sorry, I cannot really test the Ukraine audio more than 20 Iron Forest points of interest. Same for the CNPP, loads to explore with so much detail. Story-wise, I would place it alongside Phantom Liberty. This is not because Cost of Hope has the same production scale in every area, but because it gave me a cast I cared about, a conflict where both sides made convincing arguments, and a campaign I generally struggled to stop playing. The endings felt satisfying and also left interesting possibilities and hints of the second expansion. It is not flawless. Lymansk and the Radiowave Institute should have been permanent explorable regions. The CNPP arrived later than I wanted, so travel across the existing map feels like padding. The faction war takes too long to fully ignite, several important characters are underused, and visual problems remain. Some route content also overlaps more than I expected. Most criticisms don't change the final verdict. Cost of Hope is better than the strongest quest lines in the base game, larger than its marketing suggests, and easily worth the money for anyone who already enjoys Stalker 2. If you found this review useful, a like and share would be massively appreciated. I really asked, but an enormous number of hours went into completing both routes, capturing more than 360 gigabytes of 4K footage, and putting this review together. Hopefully you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Not long now until 2.0 is released, and thanks for watching.